Hey Cookie, how's your summer going? Are social media algorithms fucking up your career too? No? Well, that's good. Hey everybody, welcome back to JL's Book Club, where we don't talk about Fight Club because we didn't read Fight Club. And Cookie just walked over to the other corner. I don't think she liked my language. We have a new sponsor this week, a new beverage this week. Why do I say week? I'm so ambitious. I think I'm going to do this weekly. Who am I, reading a book a week? Am I a book critic? No, not really. But Vita Coco is the beverage of the month. Coconut water. When you want the feeling of a coconut ejaculating in your mouth, but you don't want to take it too seriously. Vita Coco. As I promised last month, summer reads are the theme. A little lighter fare, nothing too heavy. And so I read two books. How ambitious, I know. But one was about a comedian, one was about a baseball player. I figured that's lighthearted enough. Now, granted, both died tragically. That's the little J.L. Cauvin twist on summer reading. But whether you're on the beach with family looking for a distraction, or if you've had a summer fling that got out of hand and you accidentally murdered him or her on the beach and are waiting for your arraignment and just want something other than the Bible or the Quran to read while you're locked up in a correctional facility, or as the cable guy would say, facility. I'm saying that for the righteous girlfriend, who one of her favorite movies is The Cable Guy, and she is in this room right now. So I could see a tremor of laughter, never actual full laughs. That's why I'm so desperate for the approval and encouragement of strangers, because in my own home I have a dog that leaves every time I start podcasting, and a girlfriend who does her best to restrain her laughter despite living with a comedy genius. But guys, this isn't a Righteous Prick episode. This is JL's Book Club. So let's get to the books. First up, Clemente, who I think I inadvertently referred to as Panamanian in the last episode. He was Puerto Rican, okay? He was like, look at that though, he was like a dark chocolate version of Harry Belafonte playing right field for the Pirates. This is no Lin-Manuel Miranda liberal arts college Puerto Rican, and that's probably offensive. That's why we're keeping this on the Patreon. But just a chiseled piece of 60% cacao dark chocolate. Now I bought this book. I love going into bookstores, okay? And they're always displayed so nicely. And I'm like, I know I have 3 years of books to read, but look at that one that they're displaying right there. That looks like something I'll enjoy. So I picked up Clemente at least a decade ago, I think. It might have been a buy two, get one free paperback thing. And I was like, I'd like to know more about Roberto Clemente. I just know that he was a great baseball player who died tragically. And it's by David Maraniss, no relation to Rick, and it's not spelled that way anyway, so that's one of the clues as to somebody not being related to someone else. But it's Clemente, the passion and grace of baseball's last hero. And it was a New York Times bestseller. So I finally decided, I was going to read it last summer as baseball season kicked in. I go, this will be seasonal and fun. But this year I finally did. So thank you, 9 people who watch my book reviews. You are the motivation for me to diversify my reading. I loved this book. Now, I have watched more baseball since reading this book. I don't think I watched a baseball game last year. Why, do you ask? Because it's boring, it takes too long, and the Yankees weren't as competitive as they should have been last year. But the Yankees have the best record in baseball, so my front-running, baseball-loving self was like, okay, I'll go. I actually went to a baseball game this year, and the Yankees got no hit for the first time in 19 years. So if you wonder if the JL jinx is real, oh, it's real. But I read this book over the course of probably 2.5 weeks, just taking my time with it. I wasn't in any hurry. It's not super long. But it was awesome. And I haven't marked any passages in either of the books I'm going to review. But it is, if you're a baseball fan, I highly recommend it. If you're like a casual sports fan, I think you will definitely appreciate this. He wasn't the first Latin or Puerto Rican baseball player in the majors, but he was the first one inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he was the sort of first, pardon me if I'm awful of it, but the first sort of Latin superstar. So if you're somebody who lives in the Bronx and hates the fact that the borough became heavily Puerto Rican, you're not going to enjoy this, because this is definitely the start of something. But yeah, he was an incredible talent, incredibly proud. What resonated with me was the sort of deep pride in his talent and feeling he was the kind of person who constantly felt slighted. So that's where the similarities ended, because then he went on to be super successful and a Hall of Famer. I'm still at the super slighted without all the accolades to follow, but I still found a way to connect with Clemente. And also dealing with the fact that he was in terms of racially, he was I guess we would call Afro-Latino would probably be the term today, but he was a black Puerto Rican. And that kind of kept him in some ways out of black spaces fully, because there was a language barrier, but also treated, the worst of the worst if you kind of go into sort of racism classifications. But still he thrived. He was, I think, a 10 or 12-time Gold Glove winner, an MVP, a World Series MVP, won 2 World Series with Pittsburgh, played his whole career there, and died on and I'm sorry if I'm spoiling the ending, spoiler, but he died on a plane crash on his way to Nicaragua to deliver relief supplies. He was like a budding humanitarian, and I mean the lesson there is obviously don't help other people. Roberto Clemente might still be alive today if he just didn't try to help people. So if you get any lesson from the biography of Roberto Clemente, it's stay home, enjoy your money, don't help those less fortunate, because that could turn out really badly. It's actually, the last couple of chapters are about his death. It is, I wasn't expecting to be as it's moving, all jokes aside, it's moving because this is a great talent and a good person who people basically expected to become the governor of Puerto Rico. So you can imagine a lot, now, I don't know if you can hear Cookie growling. She's barking right now. She is the racist that I'm talking about. Do you hear that? Just the thought of Roberto Clemente as a governor of anything has this racist dog from Kentucky furious. Okay? But it's important that we confront this kind of hate. Okay? We don't let these animals, literally, like Cookie, cow us, to use a word that can also be an animal, from speaking truth and respecting icons like Roberto Clemente. Sorry, Cookie. Sorry, not sorry. But the last few chapters, it was such a preventable death. I don't want to go into it, but it was actually, I was enjoying the book immensely. It's really well written. The story, the person, it's so deep into his life and what he meant, and just sort of the rise of Latin players in baseball, etc. It's a great snapshot of the history of the sport as it was changing, because Clemente came into the majors in the early 50s and left in the early 70s, and America and baseball changed a lot during that. So just for that, it's a worthwhile read, unless you are just completely can't stand sports or have no interest in sports, then obviously don't read it. But if you have even a passing interest in baseball or sports, highly recommend the book. But the last few chapters are all about the lead up to his death and how preventable it was, and just shady pilots and aviation standards and all these things that are just really, it kind of built a sadness as I was reading this kind of easily preventable death of a great person. Really, I didn't cry, I'm not a bitch, but it did make me a little, sad, I think is the word. I think sad is the word. But yes, Clemente, The Passion and Grace of Baseball's Last Hero by David Maraniss. No relation to Rick. Loved this book. I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. I bought it. I had a premonition 12 years ago in a Barnes & Noble, I think I'd enjoy learning about Roberto Clemente. And it turns out 12 years, quitting comedy 5 times, real up and down journey, but I finally got to it and it was good. So thank you, Clemente. You will be missed. David Maraniss, I think you're still with us, but when you die, you will be missed too. So there's that. the second book I read over the course of the last month since we last spoke on this critically acclaimed book review show, Robin, which is not about Batman's sidekick. Okay, comic book nerds. This is not, as I said in the first episode of this is not a comic book show. Okay? This is not graphic novels book review show. It's real books. It's about Robin Williams, the legendary comic and actor, written by Dave Itzkoff, New York Times writer. I know this is going to sound repetitive, and these are obviously, you know, I'm not selecting books. Obviously, when you buy a book, you hope to like it. But if we learned anything from my review of Red Wolf, Black Leopard, sometimes you buy a book, and the next thing you know, you're reading about a guy using his own blood as anal lubricant for rape. And you go, I'm not sure this is what I wanted when I purchased this book. So there's no guarantee that you like every book you get. But of course it's skewed because you buy a book because you have some interest in either the topic, the subject, or the writer. But this month's reviews is 2 home runs, 2 highly recommended books. Robin, phenomenal book. I'm fortunate, I think, enough to be aware of most of Robin Williams' entire career. Like as a young child, I was aware of Mork and Mindy and Happy Days because they would be running as reruns. And that's sort of Mork and Mindy, other than early improv and stand-up work by Robin Williams, Mork and Mindy is sort of the vehicle that launched him into a 35-year career as a superstar in entertainment. But it was just learning about it deeply into his childhood. Like it doesn't skim on details. It's really as in-depth as possible, I think. Just from his childhood to his half-brothers to growing up and moving around because his father was an auto executive. And just his rapid rise, like he really was sort of a comic genius. Of course, some of it's annoying now. And the book is not sparing in sort of like, in his moment, he was the comic. Like he wowed other comics you'd respect with his energy and his talent. And then it goes into like how, and then all of a sudden it was like not his time anymore, and other comics were coming up, and you know how he felt threatened the same way in the George Carlin documentary. He kind of felt threatened and pushed by the emergence of Sam Kinison. Jim Carrey comes up here as somebody sort of that Robin was a little resentful of, but also in awe of his path and his ability to harness his skills. But the point being, it's a very comprehensive look. It's somebody that, you know, if you're a fan, you'll enjoy it. If you're a fan of comedy, if you're a fan of movies, you'll enjoy it. If you're a fan of Robin Williams, there's no way you wouldn't enjoy it. You might have already read it. But also just another tragic story in terms of somebody with immense talent who, you know, has some things out of his control, not just depression, but there were other ailments that really fucked with his head. And led to his suicide. And it's, when you look back, obviously he didn't have a lot of hits in the last decade of his life, but he had a good 25-year run as a A-list super, like, you know, Hall of Fame, not to use the Clemente example, but like Hall of Fame first ballot entertainer. And I loved reading about him and Billy Crystal, their friendship, because of how similar and yet so dissimilar in their personal lives that they were. But it's a you know, if you like entertainment, I feel like you'll love this book because there's so many things that he did, so many big things that he did that like, oh wow, that's when he did that movie. Oh wow, that's when he did that. Oh, that's when Comic Relief started. But without it being just some book that's just rattling off accomplishments, so you're going, remember that? It's much deeper than that. Really well written. I think it's probably, with biographies a lot of time, it's one of the questions I sometimes have about Ron Chernow books, because I love those, but sometimes you wonder, do you fall in love with your subject? You know, that's why I've put off writing that Hitler biography I've wanted to write, because I'm like, by the end of it, am I just going to be like, wow, this guy, I mean, sure he did some bad things, but like, you know, I've done so much research, I feel like I know the guy. That's why I don't want to do that, because I feel like you can fall into that trap of sort of romanticizing your subject. But this one I feel like would be an easy subject to romanticize and be like, well, I just loved Robin Williams and what he did, so it's like I just want to do a rah-rah biography. But it feels much more robust and comprehensive while still leaving you with this like, what a great entertainer. what a well-liked guy, but a guy with demons, a guy whose career wasn't perfect, career choices weren't perfect, but you leave the book going like, I'm really glad I read that, and that like I feel like I have a much more comprehensive appreciation for who he was and who he was as an artist. So yeah, those are the two books. So you get 2 thumbs up. You know, books that took me like 5 weeks to read the both of them. So if you favor one over the other, subject-wise, go get that one. But can't go wrong with either. So yeah, those are the reviews this month. I say this week, so ambitious that I think I'm doing this weekly. Now the book, I may have 2 reviews next time as well, or I may do 2 separate reviews. How about that? And now how do I describe that? It's not monthly, it's not weekly, it's whimsically, randomly, I don't know. But the next book for sure that I will be reviewing is called The Ministry for the Future. And on the top of it, it says, one of Barack Obama's favorite books of the year. Sometimes I question whether he's read all his books and listened to all his music. At the end of the year, he always puts out those lists like, I read these 420 books and listened to these 932 artists, all very different. And Michelle enjoyed them as well. And now I am putting out my list and have to get back to making millions off of Netflix and Spotify. Thank you. So it's by Kim Stanley Robinson, who is a guy named Kim. Wow. Anyway, yeah, Kim. Isn't that a weird one, guys? I once had an interview with a law firm in the middle of law school, and I met with the partner's name was Kim Blank. I'm not gonna say what his last name was, but I walk in and I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna be like Demi Moore in Disclosure, some hot, powerful bitch partner named Kim. And I walk in at some guy with a gray beard. And I was like, did your parents not love you? And then I didn't get the job. Sorry for the truth bomb, Kim. Don't want to work at a firm that can't handle the truth. Did you see A Few Good Men? That's why I went to law school. Don't recommend that as a choice for going to law school. But literally, he couldn't handle the truth. And I said, by my A Few Good Men test for wanting to be a lawyer, literally, if you can't handle the truth, I don't want to work for you. So how about that? But this author's name is Kim Stanley Robinson. I think Stanley Robinson could be like a mom's maiden name, like, oh, this is my mom, Dorothy Stanley. But Stanley Robinson is doing a lot of heavy lifting there to be like, oh, Kim Stanley Robinson. That's a very masculine last name. I guess this is probably a male Kim. Eminem's not trying to come and murder this Kim. He's going to catch those hands. Wouldn't that be funny if Eminem just was married to a man named Kim this whole time and we didn't realize it? I was like, wow, how progressive. Bye-bye, Lil Nas X. You're no longer our favorite gay rapper. Anyway, Jonathan Lethem says it's the best science fiction, nonfiction novel I've ever read. How intriguing. It's about climate change. I read a New Yorker article that mentioned this as one of the great books on great novels on climate change, and I thought, I'd like to know about climate change before we all die from it. So, might be 2 book reviews, might be a double episode in August, but one way or the other, you will definitely get a review of this book. It might be part of a few reviews, or it might be the only one, because it's a thick book. So if this ends up being kind of a struggle, like Red Wolf, Black Leopard, then it might just be this book. But guys, you've endured this. I hope I made it funny enough. I hope you take my recommendations seriously. All 13 of you who've just watched this, I appreciate it. But thanks for being Patreon subscribers. I hope you're enjoying the stuff. And more fun to come later in the month, I think. Probably, definitely. I'm contractually obligated to deliver it. So yes, there will be. But thank you. Have a good rest of the whenever you watch this. Bye.